You are playing a sport that requires you to be fast and explosive at almost every action you execute, no matter if we're talking about linear sprint, cutting directions, or shooting the ball. Speed and power are undoubtedly two of the most important physical qualities in modern football. But how do you turn your average speed and power from amateur to elite level? To be honest, that's a really complex process, but in today's video, I'm going to share one training tool with you that has helped us and our athletes see some really good results in terms of speed and power, and that is plyometric training. Now, before we dive any deeper, it is important for you to understand the correlation between plyometric training and speed and power. Let's first define speed, or better put, velocity. Now, velocity is the rate at which an object changes its position, or in the context of sport, the time a body needs to move from point A to point B. We have linear and multidirectional speed. On the other hand, we have power, which is the rate at which force is developed, or in the context of football, how fast you're able to produce high amounts of force. Now, how do these two training qualities relate with plyometric training, you may want to ask? So plyometrics are exercises that involve fast and repeated contractions of the muscles, otherwise known as the stretch shortening cycle. This cycle we see in plyometrics is present in a variety of athletic movements you have to execute on the field, such as sprinting, jumping, and cutting directions. So plyometric training basically mimics the movements as well as the rate at which force is exerted during the various actions of the game. Put in simple words, plyometrics will help you generate more force in shorter time frames, aka they will help you develop power if, of course, you use them properly. The research actually is pretty clear in regards to their effectiveness, suggesting that plyos should be incorporated in almost every individual's training regimen in some way, shape, or form. Now, there's a variety of ways you can use plyometrics to develop speed and power, which we will go over right now. So let's categorize the various types of plyometric exercises based on their characteristics. First of all, we can categorize plyometrics in terms of the direction your body moves. In that sense, we have vertical plyos, horizontal, as well as multidirectional ones. All of them can be used to develop various qualities of your physical performance. For example, a vertical plyo seems to be the more ideal training option to improve your jumping ability, while horizontal ones are proven to have a better transfer to your linear acceleration speed. This, of course, doesn't mean that each plyo will only improve one area of your physical performance. For example, linear acceleration improvements might be highly correlated with horizontal plyos, but vertical and multidirectional ones can also help you improve your linear speed through improved coordination, the improvement of your muscles' elastic properties, and increased joint stiffness. So don't get caught up using only one type of plyos just because you can jump high or sprint fast. Variety is super important, especially at the beginning. As progress is made, a more specific training stimulus would be required to avoid a plateau, but again, that comes with a more experienced athlete. Now, plyometrics aren't only categorized based on the direction that the displacement of your body happens. They can also be split based on how much time you spend on the floor. This is known as GCT, or ground contact time. As a result, we have slow and fast, or otherwise known as long and short plyometrics. Long or slow plyometrics are defined as those exercises at which the athlete spends more than 251 milliseconds on the ground. On the other hand, short or fast plyos are considered those where you spend less or exactly 250 milliseconds on the ground. Now, what you're going to use and when you will be using it is highly dependent on various factors such as your training age, your individual training needs, the macro cycle you're in, etc., etc. To offer you some perspective though, you can always refer to the force velocity curve. Slow plyometrics tend to be more focused on force development, while fast plyometrics are closer to the velocity end of the curve and focus more on expressing force as fast as possible. Both have a time and place in one's yearly or monthly training cycle, but it's in your or your coach's hands to decide what qualities you need to emphasize more on. Lastly, there's another factor that helps us set apart the different kinds of plyometric training, and that is their intensity. Now, intensity is a metric that can't be monitored as easily as volume, mainly because their intensity is dependent upon each individual's effort. If the effort in one exercise should be maximal and you're only performing sub-max efforts, this lower intensity will translate into sub-max results. So based on how high the impact is and how much the central nervous system gets involved, we can categorize plyometric movements into intensive and extensive plyos. Intensive plyos are those that require higher power outputs and therefore place higher demands and impact on the joints and the neuromuscular system. On the other hand, extensive plyos tend to be lighter on the neuromuscular system and require submaximal efforts. Both extensive and intensive plyos are important and should be used throughout the training year. Extensive ones are great for preparing the athlete ahead of a highly demanding training cycle by building a resilient musculotendinous system and help you build that stiffness in your joints, which in return can make you more springy and elastic in how you move. Extensive plyos include exercises such as hops and skips. On the other hand, intensive plyos shall also play a crucial part in one's training regimen because it is during those maximal efforts that adaptations in power and speed can be yielded the most. I know all of this info might be really confusing to you, but if you got so far, props to you. Keep watching a bit more to gain all the important nuggets, not a generic workout. So since plyometric exercises are used for power and speed development, it makes sense to use the exact training principles you use to develop those qualities. So for intensive plyos, consider a low training volume of 2 to 6 reps and 2 to 5 sets with varying resistance based on your training goal in a 3 to 5 minute rest period. Make sure to take all that rest time. They're called intensive because we want you to be firing at all cylinders and hit those maximal jumping heights and distances. The funny thing about plyos is that they don't always have to be maximal. In the case of extensive plyos, where the impact and the neural demands are low, you can use higher training volumes. As a rule of thumb, consider a higher training volume of 10 to 25 reps and 2 to 4 sets with little to no added resistance. Rest can be decreased and efforts should be sub-maximal and repetitive. I also wanted to touch upon the principle of progressive overload. As with any training activity, you shall first put the emphasis on lighter, more extensive plyos that will prepare you for the main stressor. At the same time, also add some intensive work but at minimal doses. Make sure you're moving properly, don't rush things, take your rest, and follow the plan. Here at FootXFit, we like to include a variety of plyos in our athletes' programs, no matter what training cycle they're in. The analogies of each training stimulus is what we really change and modify based on our athletes' needs. So guys, if you want to develop elite level athleticism for football, plyometric training should probably become one of your best friends. Now, if you want to leave all the guesswork to the side and take action on a set plan, consider working with us. Just hit the first link in the description and fill out the application form. But before you leave, please watch this video next if you are really serious about developing yourself into an elite level athlete.